Hi, my name is Greg Girard. I'm a photographer and I live in Vancouver, Canada. I do a combination of documentary work and personal work, make books, and I'm represented by Monte Art Gallery. I got my start as a teenager taking pictures in Vancouver downtown. On weekends, I would stay in a hotel downtown in high school and photograph people and the neighborhoods there. Started traveling in Asia as a teenager and ended up living in Japan and then later Hong Kong and most recently Shanghai. So I lived overseas and photographed in Asia for about 30 years. The first kind of complete body of work I did was a book called City of Darkness about the Kowloon Walled City. That was in the late 1980s. Kowloon was a sort of developing world kind of place. It was a homemade enclave of 300 interconnected buildings. Life was lived very publicly, so there's a very blurry border, very indistinct border between what's private and what's public, and you kind of wander through and in and out of both. Richmond's very different. The separation is quite pronounced between what's public and what's private. So to get into people's lives and to get into people's homes and even into their businesses to make photographs, there's a little more work involved. This exhibition is called Richmond Kowloon, and it is a kind of an exploration of Richmond, a place I confess I knew very little about other than memories of it when it was farms and suburbs. The Richmond part of the work, it really looks at this community and how it's changed over the time I was away. Both Richmond and Kowloon are, I guess you could say, lesser known communities inside a better known place. In the case of Richmond, Vancouver, of course, and in the case of Kowloon, Hong Kong. Vancouver and Hong Kong have traditional historical ties, and they continue to this day. So it's really a way of bringing my time in Asia, the beginning of that time, together with the recent return. I mean, I think, you know, when you look at a city, you are looking at surfaces and how they send out a message that might be at odds with its reality. That's maybe a kind of a line that runs through the work of any place I've looked at. When I photograph a place, whether it's Richmond or Kowloon, I think you're always dealing with preconceived notions of what a place might be, both by the residents and by people who don't live there and maybe don't know it so well. I think both places have a kind of a reputation that in some cases isn't always deserved. So what I'll do typically is just start looking around by spending a lot of time walking to get the trust or acceptance of people in a place like the Kowloon Walled City, which had such a bad reputation. It wasn't that difficult, actually. You go there with your equipment. I carried quite a bit of lighting equipment. I wanted to show the place really what it looked like, not in black and white, but in color, and I wanted to light it well. So at the get-go, you're carrying quite a lot of equipment, so you can't just wander around kind of surreptitiously. It's pretty obvious what you're doing. So that in itself sends, I guess, a signal of seriousness, if you can put it that way, that you're not trying to sneak pictures. You need people to let you do what you want to do. So a lot of it just involves asking. Of course, you get turned down a lot, especially in the beginning. But little by little, I think people were quite pleased to see someone taking the time to make pictures that way. And again, the reputation of the place was such that most people didn't bother to go there or photograph it. I mean, it's almost astonishing that there wasn't more coverage, that there weren't more films or pictures made. Yeah, I did start working at dusk quite early in my career, and I quite liked what happened using film that's balanced for daylight when daylight is gone, and it's a mix of artificial light from street lights or signage on shops or homes, and it's a kind of transitional moment. And in a place like Richmond, or it could be anywhere, but when you, let's say, don't have access to a place, to an interior, it's a way of bringing the interior kind of outside almost, and you get to see both at once. When I returned to Vancouver a couple of years ago, after many years living away, Richmond wouldn't have been the first place on my list to look at. It wasn't a place I knew much about when I left, though I did hear that in the subsequent decades that the place had changed a lot, and a lot of that change had to do with immigration from China, and before that from Hong Kong, before Hong Kong was part of China. So I was interested to see what that looked like, and so I was very glad to get the invitation from the Richmond Art Gallery to have that excuse to go look around and explore it. For a community that was traditionally English-speaking and suburban and even rural, this mix of a new group of people who are coming to Richmond, mostly from cities, from very dense urban living. So a sea of high-rises is sort of the natural environment in places like Shanghai or Hong Kong, or now Beijing and so many other Chinese cities as well. And how, let's say, a new group of people negotiates a place that is now in between. So it's a mix of suburbs and an urbanizing community. So I was interested to see how they negotiate that, and also the kind of world they create for themselves. I guess I had a sort of an expatriate life in the cities I lived in overseas, as much as I had Chinese friends and traveled and tried to learn the language. There's always going to be a kind of a little refuge in the places that make you feel comfortable in terms of food and socializing. So to see what the Chinese community was doing in Richmond, kind of creating a Chinese world, was something I was very interested in. People try to integrate, or they integrate in different ways, intentionally and unintentionally. And what that looked like in Richmond, I was quite interested to see and make photographs of. Being invited to photograph a community like Richmond it's a privilege, and it's something I would love to do again with other places in Vancouver. It makes you realize how little known some of these places are that one thinks one knows. That's true in Richmond. I'm sure it's true in other places as well, and I would look forward to another opportunity like this, and hopefully if not myself, hopefully someone else gets an opportunity to explore a place like I did with this project. I mean, it's a really interesting way to spend a year, or a big part of a year in my case, anyways. And what this show will show people is my take on that, but that's just mine, and I'd be interested to see other people's takes on a place like Richmond or Surrey or whatever. I think it's great for the community to be able to get a look at itself, you could say.